Hello and welcome to the Inside Gamescast. Right, Lawrence? Gamescast? Games
yeah,
Podcast?
It's
okay, cool.
Rigidly branded. We spent months prototyping that name. Man, focus tests you wouldn't believe. So yeah, you nailed it, and that's good.
Good. All right. We are back. It's been a little bit since we've done this podcast. We've been very, very busy. So we're very sorry. But also, we have a whole new list of indie games that you should be checking out instead of AAA games. So we titled this video, Don't Buy AAA Games Part 2, because we've already done one of these. But there are so many indie games that Lawrence and I play almost on a daily basis at this point that we can recommend and that will save you money. And in some cases, you can put 30, 40, 50, 100 hours into, and you've only spent $10. So I feel like this is just a fun way to curate games that we play and love, right, Lawrence?
Yeah, I think it's I think there's a growing demand for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
The reaction to some of the bigger games lately, I think specifically Dragon Age comes to mind. People, I think justifiably, criticized it for having maybe dialogue that's a little too simple, character interactions that are a little too young adult fantasy, is the polite way to put it. So I think, honestly, a lot of people are starting to realize that mass market products are made for the mass market, and that means that maybe they're not as daring, interesting, artistic. If you've been playing games for, over 10 years at this point, maybe even longer, yeah, some of the big stuff might start to seem a little samey and formulaic. But good news, you can get that spirit of innovation and those cool ideas for less than half the price sometimes. And I think the kinds of games that you're looking for, but maybe just don't know how to find. So that's what we're here to do. Give you some recommendations.
Yeah, there's one major caveat. A lot of these are on PC. They're going to be hard to find on console, so I'm sorry. But if you have a Steam Deck or if you have just the very lightest weight laptop, I would say most of these will probably be able to run on your PC. They're not going to be like indie games that require an RTX 4080 or whatever. Like it's going to be, they'll be really easy games. So here's my first one that, again, will probably run on pretty much anything. It's called TCG Card Shop Simulator. Now, TCG Card Shop Simulator is literally just you running a shop that is a card shop. So Pokemon cards, but they're ripoffs, right? They're not Pokemon because that's Nintendo. So they're called Tetramons. And by the way, all the art is not AI art. It's made by people. They have their credits in all the cards. So when you see the Tetramon card, they were made by people. They obviously look like Pokemon a little bit. But part of the simulator is running the shop. And this is I know you're saying, Bruce, there are thousands of these simulators that you have to run a shop, right? Yes, there are. If they get the gameplay loop right, then they're fun. But a lot of them do not get that gameplay loop right. This one does. This one nails the gameplay loop. However, do you like opening Pokemon cards?
A lot of people do.
A lot of people do. A lot. And there is the whole other metagame to the card shop sim, which is once you've started your shop and like you're successful and you're making enough money, you then just start opening these packs and you're just going crazy on opening these packs, finding the rare Tetramon. The game does a really good job of telling you if the game is basically like as soon as you pull a rare card, it tells you how much it's worth. And rather than it being like you have to like look it up and be like, oh, is this card a foil or like it doesn't matter. It just says this card's $5,000 and you're like, whoa. Then you take that card, you can sell it if you want in your shop and make more money toward your shop, or you can collect all the cards if you really want to play it that way. I took to selling them. So basically like what I do is I open a bunch of packs, get rare cards, sell those cards, use that money to open more packs. It's this perfect loop. And it's funny because it doesn't, I think on the surface, you're probably like, this is stupid. They're all fake, right? It's not worth any money because they're not.
Yeah, I was going through my mind just as you said it. I was like, yeah, how is that cool? How does it convince you that that's exciting when it's making up the number that it's showing you?
Right, exactly. Because it does a good job of, again, rewarding you for saying, like, let's say you've opened 5,000 packs or whatever, and all of a sudden you pull this one card that's worth $17,000. Like, it's like the rarest card in the game. It's a big deal. Normally you're pulling cards that are worth 30 cents, $1 or whatever. And then you go, oh, wait a minute, I could take that money that I made off of this card once I sell it and put it back on my shop. And it's so simple. And the reason that I think this appeals to a lot of people is there are a lot of apps that do this, but require real money. Pokemon just released It's called Pokemon TCG Pocket, and I was playing it, and it literally is just a pack opening simulator, and then also you can play the Pokemon card game on the app. But of course, it has microtransactions, so you can buy a little battle pass, and it gives you little hourglasses to open up more packs and all this other garbage, and it gives you rare cards, whatever, Pikachu, Raichu, those Mewtwo, and you use those in the card game to play. But you probably spend a lot of money to get there. And with TCG Card Shop Sim, you just pay $13, and then you could just go. Like, it doesn't matter what you pull, right? You could just go forever. You could download mods and then sit there and open 5,000 packs in a minute. And it's just a really fun game that there are no microtransactions. That's what I love about it. So it satisfies that addictive gameplay loop of the Pokemon opening cards and opening packs without any microtransactions, and I love that. It's such a good way to reinforce that. And if you're thinking to yourself like, well, Bruce, it all sounds so fake and stupid, like it doesn't make any sense, it's not worth any money, you might be addicted to gambling, number one. And then number two, just try it because the gameplay loop is super satisfying and really fun.
I mean, I'm seeing you hose down some smelly nerds with air freshener right now. That's pretty fun.
That's the best. I didn't even mention that. That's like what hooks you in the game, is that you open your card shop and every third customer is fucking stinky, Lawrence. They stink because they're nerds, right? And what you need to do is you grab like a deodorizer spray. Basically, you have to spray them down. Otherwise, they drive other customers away.
Oh, okay.
So you have to make sure they don't stink, and like you level that up where you put an automatic shower in the front of your store so that when they walk in, they are automatically sprayed because they stink. And all the nerds look like the nerdiest of nerds that go into these card shops, and that they can play against other nerds. And it's really fun. There's lots of fun little stereotypes and stuff like that when it comes to running the shop. But then of course you have the opening cards. So like there are cool little hooks that I think this is a singular dev. This one guy made, and just did a really good job of streamlining this gameplay loop and streamlining that fun that a lot of these simulators don't do. Usually these simulators there's too much to do, but this one there's like just enough to keep you interested, and then those card packs just hook you once you really get into it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've certainly played games where the magic of lights and sounds is enough. Peggle comes to mind.
Oh yeah.
To describe it in words is stupid, but when you play it, it's awesome and it's very engrossing. So I do, at least intellectually, buy that opening digital card packs is an exciting thing. So you mentioned if you get a valuable card, you can turn it into currency and then invest it back in your shop. Mm-hmm. What does that turn into? Is it like there's more racks so you can earn more money per day? Are you constantly like waiting to earn cash and then you get one card that lets you leapfrog a grind or something like that? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you get lucky, which a lot of people don't. Like, it took me 20,000 packs to open a card that was probably one of the rarest cards in the game. And 20,000 packs is a lot of packs to open. And that was a lot of in-game days. It's like 100 in-game days. So we're talking like 50 hours. But imagine you pull that card in your first 10 or your first 5 hours. That will immediately let you leapfrog so many different levels of expanding your shop, buying new storage, buying more items to sell, that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden you got this really large shop that will bring in more customers that will make you more money. That's sort of that's the hook, is that you can, if you open $1,000 card from, having spent, maybe you only spent like $300 or $400 on packs. Well, you just made $600, my friend, right? So like at that point, then you're like, oh wow, okay, all right, this is cool. Like I can upgrade my shop, make it a little larger, or I can put in a couple tables and have people come play the card game, and then I'll make some money off of that. I promise you, it's so deceiving because it looks stupid, and Vampire Survivors is the same way. Vampire Survivors looks so stupid. You're like, this is so dumb. I mean, you're just in the middle of you're just walking around and killing things. Who cares? But like Lawrence said, lights and sounds, man. Lights and sound in Vampire Survivors is so good. And it makes you feel so satisfied. And I just cannot stress enough, there are no microtransactions, and that is so important, because otherwise, like, we're in a world of gacha games that you pay an extra $1 and then you get the lights and sounds. You don't do that in this game. You don't do that in Vampire Survivors. Whatever you pay, and you're good to go. So I just think this dev has made a really, really solid game with no microtransactions.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up Vampire Survivors. That was going to be a game that I was going to mention. It's been out for a while, but they just recently got Castlevania DLC.
Yeah.
Their DLC, I mean, the base game is ludicrously priced for the amount of time you can play it. All of the expansion packs are also extremely cheap. So they definitely have a mind on value. And obviously, I think it's one of those things where, like you said, Bruce, if you look at the game, your immediate reaction is this game can't cost more than $3. And that's about what it costs. So that lands. But then if you actually play it, then you start to discover there's a whole deep universe there. But the Castlevania DLC is, I was playing it a little bit, and I can recommend it already. I mean, the soundtrack, it's got a bunch of remixes of Castlevania music, which is outrageous. It's kind of nice to see Konami doing things with games again, just in general. But the layout of this DLC is also kind of a bit of an evolution from just like stacks of levels in a very arcane kind of progression system. This time it's like one giant map, and as you explore it, you unlock teleporters to go around, so you can eventually like shortcut your way to different parts of the map to complete map objectives faster. And there's a lot of Castlevania characters. I don't know. It's an easy recommendation to make because it is so inexpensive, and you can get a lot of playtime out of it.
It's like it's $5. The retail's $5 for Vampire Survivors, and then the DLC is what, $3?
Good question. Let me check.
It's got to be like $2 or $3. Lawrence, did you know about this DLC? Because I haven't played it yet, but did you know that it's got 20 extra characters and 40 extra weapons, but that if you beat what appears to be the last boss, that new parts of the DLC unlock, and there's even more. There's more than double. That's this developer that's been making Vampire Survivors does this, where like he gives you a couple of things and you're like, oh, okay, all right, $3 for some DLC, that two extra characters, that seems all right. And then all of a sudden he's like, boom, here's 20 more. And you're like, what? Like, what? This developer's been doing this for years, and Vampire Survivors is a game that I can recommend to anyone. It's the best.
Yeah. I guess I would guess there might be some kind of upside down castle. If I were to venture, it's been a long time since I played Symphony of the Night, but yeah, there's a lot of very fun references to old Castlevania games, because that's essentially what the whole game is. Still no vampires though. Another game that I wanted to give, that's just the easiest game in the world to recommend. And I'd actually brought this up when we were talking about games that weren't out yet, but now it is out. UFO 50. This game is super easy because truly, so the 50 is 50 games. Every single one of these games is like 80% the scope of a solid independent indie Steam release. Every single one. There's some that are a little more like experimental than others. They almost have like a cookie clicker progression type thing. It kind of runs in the background while you're playing other games. So you like check in on it every now and then to like upgrade something or invest in something. But every game also is in a uniquely independent genre. You have shooters, you have RPGs, you have like adventure games, tactics games. You have basically modern takes on all the genres that existed back in the 8-bit era, and then also some 8-bit interpretations of genres that weren't even around yet. So a lot of really, really cool stuff. And nearly every game, if you're into design or just seeing like how rule sets can interlock to form a gameplay experience that's interesting, it's just such a masterclass in that. Because every single game has like one or at least two quirks that make it interesting and different than just like a bleepy bloopy platformer, which is kind of what you might expect when you look at it and you see the wall of games. That's
actually exactly what I haven't played this yet, and it's actually exactly what I expect. I'm like, there's no way this thing's worth $25. Is it really worth $25?
I would say so, yeah. Unless you have extremely narrow preferences about the kind of games you like. If you only like one or two genres and that's it, then maybe not. Then it might actually be a little too eclectic for what you're looking for. But odds are, no matter what you like, there will be maybe 3 or 4 games inside of UFO 50 that do cater to that kind of experience. Yeah, there's like real-time strategy. There's like civilization-style strategy games and stuff like that. It's pretty outrageous. really. And that's what is so exciting about it, is that it, in terms of value and experimentation, it delivers on such a scale that I don't think any other game ever has. There have been compilation games in the past. A lot of them get memed on. There's Action 52, which is where Cheetah Men came from. You know Cheetah Men. We all know Cheetah Men. Look it up if you don't know Cheetah Men, by the way. It's got a banging theme song that's been memed around. But the thing is with those compilations, usually like 48% or like 48 of the 50 games would be absolute garbage or palette swaps of something that already exists, just really low effort turnaround stuff. But really what they did here is make very well thought out, incredibly well designed games top to bottom. You can't find a weak one in there unless it's something you just kind of don't like. But that's what makes it, for me at least, a really easy recommendation. It kind of it tickles me a little bit too, because the game's concept is that it's chronicling all the games from a fictional publisher, basically from the early to late 80s. But even over the course of the fake games, you can see an evolution in the craft of game design. So a lot of the older games are a lot cruder. Some of them don't have music. But then you roll forward and suddenly all the sprite work gets a lot more intricate, and they figure out new graphical techniques. So they really do a good job of reinterpreting the march of technology as it used to happen, or the innovation when you were kind of locked to one hardware platform for 10 years. So that was a nice flashback too. Good respecting of games culture, I guess.
Yeah.
If that stuff tickled you about Astrobot, by the way, the references to other games and the celebration of that stuff, I think UFO 50 is kind of that, but for the 80s, whereas Astro was for like the late 90s and 2000s.
Got it. That makes sense. Cool. Okay, that's I kept thinking UFO 50 was a compilation of older games, but it sounds like there are a lot of newer games that are just basically homages to older games. Is that correct?
They're all new. Yeah, they're all like modern design, which is I think the important part. There's no games in here that like you play it for hours and hours and you fall into a pit and you're kicked back to the title screen. Well, some of them are like that, but it's not nearly as trolly and incomplete and arbitrary as actual games from the 80s used to be. It's all very holistically designed to the point where like I wouldn't consider myself like a huge retro player, and in fact I got really frustrated back in the 80s with a lot of those games.
Oh yeah. But
the games in UFO 50 are much more fair and much more like well thought out. So if you sit down with one or two of them, you can pretty much beat them. Every game has like a clear condition and then like a super clear condition. So if you're a completionist too, it'll take forever to get cherries on every game. That's impossible, Bruce. I'm sure people have already done it, but I'm sitting at like 4 crowns myself, which is the like clear condition.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, it's I know that you don't have a huge affection or affinity for like retro style games.
I don't, and I played them, by the way. Like I grew up playing those games, but I don't have any affinity for them now. But it's good to hear that they have the current game design in mind, rather than like you said, playing a game for 4 hours and then falling in a pit and dying and then having to restart. Like I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does. Only the very nostalgic.
Right.
I think celebrate that kind of design. So yeah, it doesn't lean into that too much. It does maybe a little bit out of cheek, but luckily you're not trapped into playing any particular game. So yeah, I would, if you ever find the time, I would be curious what you think about it, Bruce, because hopefully it is retro in style, but with a more modern lens to the actual gameplay.
Yeah. I'll try and recap too. We talked about TCG Card Shop, which is $13. Talked about Vampire Survivors, which is $5, but the DLC, I think it's total $8.
4, yeah.
Or is it 4? So it's
4,
9.
but it's on sale for $350 right now.
There you go, $350, nice. And then we talked about UFO 50, which is $25. The next one I want to talk about is a game that both Lawrence and I have already played, but it's not out yet. It's called Delta Force. And Delta Force is, I don't know necessarily you consider this an indie, but it is going to be free to play. I'm not sure it's published by Timmy Studio Group. And Delta Force is the closest game I have played to Battlefield that isn't Battlefield. Now I know BattleBit came out, I think it was last year, and BattleBit didn't feel like Battlefield because it doesn't look like Battlefield to me. I know it played a lot like Battlefield for a lot of people, but it didn't feel that way. And Delta Force really, really feels like Battlefield. Like they've done such a good job of putting in the vehicles, putting in the capture points, putting in all the different classes with healing and being an engineer. And I mean, like, really, honestly, it's like a carbon copy of Battlefield, but it's going to be free to play as far as I know. And I've played the alpha and the beta, and I've had just a blast every time I played it. And I really do think this is worth your time if you have any interest at all in Battlefield. I'm not sure if this will appeal to Call of Duty players as much, but it really does feel like it will appeal to a bunch of different Battlefield players, and there's no barrier to entry because it's free to play. And I'm very excited to try this and how to sort of check in with this once a week and see kind of where it's going, because I immediately vibe with it because of Battlefield. I can't speak for Lawrence here, but I just love that it's free. There's going to be battle passes and stuff like that, but it's free. So hey, give it a shot.
Yeah, I'm all for somebody trying the Battlefield thing. It's weird that EA seems largely uncontested, or DICE, which, no hate in that direction. Well, maybe a little, but I like Battlefield 2, which is why my relationship with DICE and EA is a little complicated on the matter. Not to discredit the recommendation, because I do agree. I had a lot of fun with it. It did feel instantly familiar and comfortable. It felt like Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 in a way that even 2042 didn't really feel like.
Yeah.
However, though, Teamy Group is a subsidiary of Tencent. So
yeah,
in that regard, not the most indie, but also it's like you said, it's free. So, and again, I'm okay with anything that puts up a little fight against the, I guess, hegemony of competitive first-person shooters. So, I recommend that too.
Yeah, that's the reason I said it, is because I know it's not an indie per se, but it is free to play. And it's like in the same way I would recommend Apex, which is obviously published by EA, but Apex is free and Apex is fantastic. Like, it really honestly is a great video game, and it has been for years. And I think Delta Force sort of has that capability, that potential to be a really, really good competitor to Battlefield, and may hopefully kind of force EA and DICE to make a better Battlefield, because they've done a great job and made it free. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always good when, a little competition always ups everyone's game. So
right.
Yeah, and DICE has been quiet for a while. They're due to announce something soon, but in the meantime, people are waiting.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I've got a handful of, these are kind of classically styled, but with a more modern production sensibility. The first is Iron Meat. This is Contra. Konami's Contra. There's really no like trying to masquerade it as anything else, but it's good. And also, Konami doesn't make Contra anymore. So it's great. And the music's fantastic. Pixel art's phenomenal. Lots of unlockable characters. A fair amount of stages. Side-scrolling shooters are never that long, really, just because I think it's kind of hard to make a game that interesting for that amount of time. But I think it's got like 8 or 9 stages, which is, well more than Contra games usually have. I want to say it was like maybe 2.5 to 3 hours start to finish to play through it all the first time. But that's not unlocking everything. That's not playing on the hard difficulty. And even if you just want like a casual run through a fun, nostalgic, really metal, meat grindery, kind of industrial rock, side-scrolling shooter kind of thing, it's perfect. Pitch perfect. Everything's great about it. If you like Contra 3 or even Shattered Soldier, any of the Contras, this is your thing, and you should take a look at it.
Okay. I loved Contra when I was a kid, and Contra was something that, like we were talking about earlier with retro games, where you would die and then it would just restart you from the very beginning, and you're just like, ah.
Yeah.
So does this game do that?
It restarts you from your stage, but it usually loads you up with enough lives that you can just die your way through a level regardless.
Cool. That's great. Okay.
I will, like some of the later stages, the first time I played a particular stage, I did not make it through with whatever grip of lives I had. I think it's like 30 on normal, which is a lot. It's enough to have some fun. But I made it through the ending stages like second, third try, something like that, after seeing some patterns. So it's pretty observable. And yeah, it doesn't kick you back to the title screen, which is not nearly as demoralizing as like something like Contra. So yeah, hopefully that takes a bit of the edge off too. You can like at least see the whole game, and there's a lot of ridiculous bosses and silly moments where a boss walks out and then gets flattened by something or exploded or breaks into chunks. It wears its theme pretty directly on its sleeve.
Oh, it looks just like Contra. It's also $20. So I mean, like, how many hours of gameplay are we looking at, you think, Lawrence?
Well, it depends. If you're a real side-scrolling shooter enthusiast, and there aren't a lot of these games, so that's not necessarily the biggest audience, but it's also an audience I think is pretty underserved. If you enjoy these games and there just haven't been a whole lot for you, then I think it's totally worth it. For somebody who's maybe a casual fan, unless you have really warm feelings for Contra back in the day, then it might get a little more dicey, especially if you typically associate retro-looking games with games that are like $10 or less.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it earns its price. But that said, I'm pretty permissive of games that like do what they do and do it really well, and specifically games that do a thing that not a lot of other people are doing at a particular time. And I think that's what Iron Meat is right now.
Okay. Yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, just like Contra, and honestly, kind of scratches that itch in the back of my head that I'm like, because I played hours and hours of Contra, and it looks exactly the same in a good way, in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of homages and stuff, pretty direct references. It knows what it is.
Yeah. At the risk of telling you more simulators to play, because I have a lot of simulators in this list.
Yeah.
But the next one is Supermarket Together. Now, Supermarket Together is obviously, you're thinking, well, there was a supermarket simulator game that was basically just you running a shop again, same deal, stocking the shelves, building a shop, making money, and it's the same gameplay loop. Which, by the way, it's a great simulator, supermarket simulator. Supermarket Together is that, but it's for up to 16 people, and it's free. So this game is free to play. It's a co-op supermarket simulator, and for huge amounts of friends. It's a great. I've played like 20, 25 hours of it now with a bunch of friends, and it really is a lot of fun. So they do a good job of making it feel like a good simulator. But I think you're going to have to play this with a friend or two. Like, you're not going to be able to load into this and play by yourself. You have to play with probably like 2 or 3, 4 people. So if you have a group of people that you play games with online, this is perfect for that. One of you is going to settle into the manager position. The other one's going to settle into the stocking position. And then that's when it gets like ridiculous, because then you're arguing about what goes where and who does what, and anyone can buy anything. So there's no, so it's a really fun, do you want to herd cats and make a good store, or do you want to just fuck everything up? And that's why I love it, because it could go either way. So you sort of, the group that I've been playing with, we oscillate between let's make a good shop, and like we want to make sure we make and then everyone will just decide to just fuck it all up for a second. And it's actually really well made. It's a well made video game that has you knocking over shoplifters with brooms. So when they steal from you, you have to run up there and hit them, and it has the sort of the simulator charm in that sense. But then it's also got this like really good multiplayer. It's such a weird. I remember looking at it before I started playing it, and it's got 30,000, almost 30,000 positive, more than 30,000 positive reviews, and I didn't even know about it. It's just free, and there's a hilarious DLC that you pay $5 to get into this special room.
Yeah.
And all it is just special dances and special hats. That's awesome. It's all cosmetic. And so what's funny about this is, again, you load in with your friends, and if you paid $5, you can walk into this room, and then you're standing there, and your friend who didn't pay $5 is outside the room, and you're like doing dances and stuff, and showing them the stuff they didn't buy. And it's I just think it's really fun. And so at most you're going to pay $5 for this game. I think it's a great way to kill time with a few friends. And again, a well-made simulator that's co-op.
Right on. So, yeah. I didn't expect it to be free, and I didn't expect the number of players to be so high. So that's really amazing. It sounds like the sort of thing where it kind of becomes an unfolding sociological experiment. If you just dump all these people in a room with a task, and they either do it or don't, or bicker or get along. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. It's
really cool. I just can't say enough about the co-op aspect of this. that really makes this game. It's much like Phasmophobia. Like Phasmophobia, you can play and do matchmaking or whatever, but like you got to play with friends. That's how you should play the game, unless you're really trying to min max it or whatever. But like, it's the real fun is playing with friends and having good natured arguments about what goes where and who does what and all that other stuff. So
that sounds great. And yeah, the fact that it's free, my gosh, what a
killer!
What a dunk! What an easy recommendation. This is the kind of thing that I would have killed for back when I had a bunch of friends that were online all the time. Just a good way to like hang out after work or school or anything like that. That looks awesome.
That's right.
All right, well, I'm yanking it back the other way again. It's nothing but simple action with Kill Knight.
Yeah.
I remember like kind of footnoting to check this out because we talked about it in the Inside Games Roundup. It is, you remember Devil Daggers? Remember that game?
Barely.
It was just like super fast and you would run around and die in like 13 seconds. But every time you try to get a bit higher of a score, Kill Knight has a lot of that energy. It's not quite as intense, but it is a twin stick shooter instead of being first person. And it's just a brutal, fast, responsive Twitch action game. It does have some progression, like there's different weapons you can pick up. There's different stages to go through. I guess the objective would be to actually finish all the stages, but that's quite difficult if you want to try that. This is a game that like you will fail a lot and replay stages a lot because it does help to kind of memorize where enemies come out and stuff like that. But it's got a really smart design. Essentially, it kind of reminds me of Doom Eternal a little bit in how it has different mechanics for replenishing your ammo or recharging your like super meter or even getting health back. So essentially, while all these enemy waves are coming at you, you're also sort of trying to manage all your resources and trying to plan around in combination with the enemy waves that you see and prioritizing the right targets. What else do you need? Do you need to get health? Do you need to recharge your super bar? Do you need to charge up your guns or whatever? It does a lot of smart, making you make a lot of very quick strategic decisions. And then also you have to hit the buttons right and stay alive and dodge shots and stuff like that. So it's one of those games that like, if you're into fast Twitch action, that's not just action, like it requires a little bit of planning and strategy, and also something that will kind of push you a little bit. This game's great. And it's the, like I say a lot, it's the kind of game that people haven't made a whole ton of. So I'm excited that it's here, and I had a great afternoon with it. But yeah, not the kind of game you probably want to pick up after a long day of work or something like that, because it's gonna ask something of you.
Right. It's $15, and would you say that because it kind of looks like Hades? Is it like a Hades type of thing? Roguelike, or no?
Not really a roguelike or roguelite, but maybe Hades at the very top end of Hades difficulty. Hades 1 I can really only speak to. But yeah, it moves way faster. There's tons more shit on the screen. And death comes, well, you can die pretty quick in Hades, but yeah, if you were into the action of Hades, of like the higher end of the combat ceiling in Hades, then yeah, Kill Knight is probably something that'll excite you. But Kill Knight is kind of more geared around playing clean and getting high scores, of just like really nailing crazy difficult stages without getting shot and killing all the enemies in one flowing combo so that you can get an incredible score and feel really good about yourself. It doesn't really have the story layers that Hades had, you know? You get to look at pretty people bantering with each other ever so intelligently. Not a whole lot of that. It is called Kill Knight, you know? It's not really that intelligent in that way, but yeah, it's just very tightly designed. Everything is there for a reason, and everything has a purpose. And everything is a tool to be used the right way. And you kind of have to master your tools to be victorious at the game. So it's got that really cool loop about it.
Looks like a super try-hard game that you like. Lawrence is definitely going to sit down and like demolish. And because Lawrence is such a gamer, he just absolutely kills it. And he'd be like, yeah, it's kind of hard. And then I'd play it and be like, just get my ass kicked. And be like, yeah, Lawrence, it's pretty hard.
It's pretty hard. I mean, I got my ass whooped, like, I want to say for the first 20 minutes. But that I tend to react to that. If a game is well designed, I react to that by wanting to know more. Whereas other people will just be like, I'm not here to be stressed, and then they'll move on. So yeah, I'm trying to think of like how general to get. I'm not necessarily bringing up every game as a recommendation to everyone, but more like, more like in the indie scene, you can find a lot of games that cater to specific interests, and these days are doing so very, very well. So if that is your interest, Kill Knight's something you should look at.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point that you made, is that I would say not all of these games are for everybody. Because those simulator games can be really slow, and like you can kind of like, it takes a little, it's like there's a lot of plodding along, a lot of sinking time into. And Kill Knight is also like a perfect example of a game that's really, really hard that you may not be in the mood for at a specific point in time. So like these are games that I'd say if you're in the mood for those type of games, they're perfect. I don't want to cut you off if you're done with Kill Knight at all.
No, I'm good. There's the beauty of it is there's not really that much to say aside from it's fast, it's hard, and it rocks.
Yeah, is the music good? I assume the music's good.
Yeah. Wow. Just to throw it back a bit, the music in Iron Meat is also amazing. If you're into like synthy industrial, like grungy 90s bullshit, but I am, so there you go. Kill Knight is a little more what's the word? I'd actually have to listen to it again, I think, to summarize it well. But yeah, it fits the tone well. I'll say that. It's very gothic and intense.
Gotcha. Kill Knight's $15 on Steam. My next one is called Zucos. I don't know if you... I was
really curious about this, but I haven't played it yet.
So we're past Halloween. It's a good Halloween game. But Zucos is a game that I had seen people talk about, and it kept... The hook of the game is that you're a zookeeper who's trying to figure out a way to help animals, basically. And I was like, there's no way this game is scary. Like, it doesn't make any sense. How could it be scary? They're just animals. Like, maybe they mutate or whatever. It looks kind of wonky. The Steam reviews are mixed. The game's $25. But Zucos, when I first started playing it, had a really interesting narrative initially that hooked me, because it's all first person, and you basically it's like Skyrim, where you wake up in this like disgusting zoo, back of the zoo, and there's this disgusting dude being like, okay, so get out there and make sure you test the animals for these diseases. One of them might mutate. Be careful, bye. And then they leave. And the environment and the narrative and like the voice acting is pretty good. So it's all off the wall. It's like completely unique and weird. There are games like this, but I've never seen the setup to this game ever. And so what it ends up being is you investigating different animals with different tools to find out what kind of diseases they have. And as a normal zookeeper, you just go in and like, you're just checking them to see, okay, they've got a fever, or they have this, or they have that. And you go and make some medicine and like, hit them with a ibuprofen or something, like pretty standard. However, as the game goes along, you start to sort of uncover this conspiracy of there's testing on these animals, and they're turning these animals into like mutants, disgusting mutants. And that's where like the Halloween aspect comes into play. And that's really fun, because then you get to see what the animals mutate into, and you have to then save the normal animals from the mutated animal. Yes, it will kill you, but that's not even really the point. You see a bunch of penguins, and they're cute and they're adorable and they're running around, and like then you see the one mutated penguin who might come over and kill the other penguins, and you're like, no, I gotta save the penguins. So then you have to, it's a really interesting way to think about like, there's no animal cruelty in this. You're instead trying to not only help the animals that are innocent, but the mutated animal, you're also trying to figure out how to unmutate it. You're not trying to really kill them. You can, but you don't. But I think with the good ending, because there's lots of endings to Zucos, the good ending is that you helped all the animals. And that's what I thought was really unique about this, was that the narrative was maybe better than what the game is. Like I was like, this is kind of cool. Like if they gave this team a little more money, they could probably make a pretty solid horror game that isn't, a $25 indie. But Zucos is really cool.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by games whose core actions, the way that you interact with the world, is not combative or destructive. That's always fun.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Because again, you can kill them, but the game encourages you not to. Like it's telling you, no, you don't have to. You can give them an antidote, and then they will become a normal hippo again. and they all have names, so they're humanized, like you would a zookeeper, and you want to make sure every animal survives.
Okay.
And that's the fun part is being like, no, I don't want my gorilla to die like this. I know, this one gorilla named Ted, like he seems so nice, because the nice animals, the ones that aren't mutated, will come up to you and like hide and be like, there's a scary guy over there. Like they'll like literally take shelter with you, which is awesome. And it makes you feel attached to the animals.
That's cute. Is it?
Yeah, it is.
How likely is it that you can save animals like your first playthrough? Are you probably going to lose a few until you figure out the ropes in a game like that?
Probably, yeah. I mean, there were a couple times where like I was attempting to save one of them, and I ended up killing him. And it's like the saddest thing in the world, because you killed the mutated one and you run over like, no, like I knew, like Thomas the gorilla, like I didn't mean it's such a bummer. And then it's trial and error, so you like figure out, oh, like this is what would have solved that mutation. I could have hit him with a tranq dart that would have done this, and it would have made them turn back to their normal form rather than killing them. Yeah, so it's and like if you watch the trailer on Steam, like there's a lot of like petting giraffes and stuff like that. So there's a lot of interacting with animals. If you really like animals, I think it's really great for that, because you feel really bad for them immediately.
Man.
So
yeah, games that have empathy as a game mechanic. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I had no idea. I remember the trailer, and I just remember there being glorped out animals, and that was it. So I thought it was like, okay, I guess you just get chased around by these crazy animals that are all mutated. But yeah, that sounds way more profound than I was expecting. So that's awesome.
It is. The mechanics are way deeper than you ever thought, because I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, it's just a horror game. You go in, kill the mutated animals, that's it. But there's a lot more to it than that. And there's a lot of endings to Zucos. I don't think I even got to an ending. But there's a lot more to it, and obviously like there's even there's like the scary I guess overarching narrative of like, oh, like what are we feeding these animals, and like you'll find out as you play.
Okay, right on. Cool. That's a great recommendation. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, of course.
Let's see, the next one that I've got up is it's kind of intense. I was going to recommend Crow Country, but I think I did that last time. If I didn't, check out Crow Country. It's awesome. But there's another game called Nobody Wants to Die that I came across. Yeah, this game it's pretty easy to wrap your head around. I'm going to be honest. It's not that intricate in terms of its gameplay mechanics, really. It's a first-person narrative game. Very story-heavy, very dialogue-heavy. The gameplay, such as it is, really involves you, a detective, kind of going around these explorable environments, finding clues, and eventually piecing together the mystery of what happened there. You have this like it's like retro cyberpunk, retro futurism, basically. You're in this like Art Deco cyberpunk city, kind of Batman leaning a little bit, and you play a grizzled detective. So already the setup's pretty cozy and charming, but you have a little bracelet that can like holographically project and rewind time. And that's essentially what you do when you go into these environments. Is something terrible happens in a place, and you sort of fast forward and rewind time to see what happened there and solve mysteries. But the story is it's pretty disquieting science fiction, and pretty well told. It's the title is pretty explicit about what the game is. Rather, they've like figured out a way to move human consciousness around. So you essentially uncover this conspiracy in the city that you live in. And I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it, like I said before, it is the kind of game that people don't make much anymore. There was an explosion, or explosion is the wrong word, but there were more of these games in like the late 2000s and early 2010s, when I guess they could do kinds of games like this. But it's cool. It's futuristic. The story it tells is pretty interesting. The writing's pretty good. The performances are pretty good. It's just a good experience. And they don't make a whole lot of first-person kind of linear narrative games like this. Well, there was what's the one about the nun? That one was really good too. Indica, I think.
Oh, I didn't play that one. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one that is also really, it's, pretty direct, pretty linear, hallways and stuff like that. But if you're into story, which is not something usually indie games had, actually, kind of a linear story experience. Used to be all bleepy bloopy platformers. So I'm glad that we're starting to get some linear narrative games out of the indie space. And I say linear, it actually has multiple endings too, depending on what you do and what choices you make. The choices kind of happen at the end. It's kind of forks off and stuff. But yeah, I think it's cool and it's worth a look if you're into that kind of game.
Yeah, I played this, Lawrence. I played the first 3 hours of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's $25 on Steam, and you're right. It's like barely a video game. Like there's like it really is just a story being told as you're moving along, and there's fun stuff that you do. It feels very much like the brain dances in Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Where that's pretty much all it is the entire time.
Yep.
However, like Lawrence said, it is so stylized. The writing and voice acting are so good that I was like, man, this is like, again, if they gave this team a AAA budget, they could make a really fucking awesome game. And I was really impressed with just because I say this often on Inside Games, is that in terms of writing in a video game, generally speaking, writing in video games not very good, usually, most of the time, when compared to television and movies. But this game actually had some really solid narrative that you followed along with, and really I kind of got into as I was playing it. There's a lot of sci-fi concepts from Altered Carbon. That's the most recent, transferring your consciousness from one body to another type of thing. And again, Nobody Wants to Die does a good job of communicating those sci-fi concepts in a really film noir type of way. So yes, this is a great recommendation. $25. I was like, how long did it take you to beat it? Do you know?
Actually, I spliced a little video together. 7 hours.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And you could do different endings, it sounded like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't get the best ending. I wanted to go back. I haven't found the time yet, but I want to, because yeah, I was bought into the characters. Also, it's one of those things. I don't want to play it up too much, but it is one of those things where like the game happens and then there's this kind of other narrative. There's like consciousness transference and stuff. So there's other narratives about like who was doing what and where and what happened before the game started. And all that stuff is kind of hinted at. But once you've seen an ending or like one path through the game and you think back and you're like, wait a minute, hold on a minute. And then suddenly like sparks start flying and you're like, oh, there's a whole other layer to it that if I play it again, I think I'll actually pick up on, and then I'll have the full story. So it's got the writing goes beyond just like the dialogue and just the plot, which I think are good. I think there's actually like a pretty cosmic brained twist that's sort of hidden under all of that about what's going on and who is who. So I'll plant that seed there. But yeah, I mean, it, like you were kind of alluding to, Bruce, it was like, what do you say, $25?
$25, yeah.
Yeah, for 7 hours of what is essentially like an interactive movie. I mean, movies cost more than that.
True.
If you buy or rent them on Amazon or something like that. So I think it's well worth it. And there were some real solid science fiction ideas and stories going on here.
Yeah, it is really like, it's just like I was impressed, which I'm not easily impressed. Going back to Dragon Age, people are always talking about like, oh, the writing's kind of like you said, like, junior high school range.
CW. That's kind of what I always likened it to.
And it's always funny to be like, oh man, they've fallen so far since Mass Effect. We're like, no, dude, the writing's always been shitty, man. It's always been CW style writing. It's like, if you like it, you like it. Whatever, I don't care. Anyways, so the writing in this is actually pretty solid, and since it's a pared down experience, I think they did a good job of really making it tight. A very tight narrative for what it is. Yeah. Should we move on to the next one, or do you want me to? Do you got more to talk about?
No, please do. I'm excited to hear your next one, Bruce.
Well, you know it. It's called Star Trucker.
Oh, hell yeah!
And yeah, Star Trucker is $20 on Steam. It's yet another kind of a simulator, but I would say this is a more stylized simulator. So if you have played American Truck Simulator and know what American Truck Simulator is, it is that, but it is in space. So you are literally a truck in space flying around to, different space stations, but they're truck stops. And Star Trucker is way more complicated than you think it is, like by a lot. I remember being like, oh, it'll be like American, because American Truck Simulator is pretty complicated. And I was like, it'll just be American Truck Simulator in space. And it's not. There's even more that you have to think about because you're in space. And you're managing your oxygen, you're managing your fuel, you're managing every single aspect of your truck. You're managing, like there's a lot of stuff going on. So I really think you could sit down and play this game for 20, 30, 40 hours and just be like, holy shit, what happened to my time? Because it takes so long to do things in Star Trucker. And there's some fantastic vistas that you see while traveling the galaxy and, trucking corporations, toys and shit like that to different space stations. So to me, $20 is totally worth it for Star Trucker. It's a fantastic experience and really, really hard. That's one thing that, again, like when I first started playing this, I did not expect it to be so hard. So I was initially put off by that. So if somebody had said, "Hey, this game is hard," I would have gone in thinking, "All right, I'm going to have to really, think hard about what I'm doing." Versus, I could just slam into a space station and I'll be all right. No, you cannot do that. Every single decision has consequences. If you accidentally, you're going through and you hit a little space junk, like, well, the space junk probably fucked up your truck. Now you got to go outside and fix it. Otherwise, you're leaking oxygen and you might die. So it's like, there's like a lot of stuff you got to do.
I had such a memorable experience with Star Trucker because yes, it is quite hard. A lot of the mistakes you make cost you money, one way or the other.
Yes.
Whether it's damage to your ship or something. So I had the experience of just really feeling like I was getting ground down by the man in this game.
Yeah.
I'd make a haul, I'd make a little bit of money, and it's already out the door in gas because I got to fuel up my fucking car. I got to buy another air filter because I dinged a rock, and for some reason that broke my air filter. So after a haul that was supposed to get me out of the hole, somehow I'm ending up with less money than I started. So I got to take another job, and I drag that over, except turns out I went to the wrong gate. So now I got to go back. Now it's too late, and they're charging me for non-delivery plus a penalty because I signed a contract. And yeah, I had some pretty amazing stories of just like trying my hardest and still coming up short. And then you like click on the radio and the game has like a bunch of custom made trucking songs. And I remember like looking at my bank account, it's like negative 15,000. The radio's playing a mournful song about catching the last gate out of Gastown or whatever. And it started to hit me a little bit. I started to feel a little ground up. Made me feel that like blue collar solidarity a little bit. So yeah, it's a great game. It's if all that's intentional, if like they meant for your first couple of runs to make you feel like a ground down poor trucker, mission accomplished. And that's pretty brilliant to do it like that. Because yeah, Bruce, like you, I thought it's like just in space, whatever. It's 3D. I could just fly whatever, grab whatever, drop it off wherever. No.
Nope.
Oh
no.
Man. Yeah, they punish you for getting off the road because yeah, and you also think it's just a little pebble. It's space. What could it? No. Also terrible. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, there was one time. Okay, I have to share this story just because I could not believe it. So there are deliveries you can take that have to happen between a particular window.
Correct.
And time dilates when you're jumping. So when you jump between like areas, it'll skip the clock ahead. So the way it worked out was I like got to my destination and it was too early, so they weren't even taking the delivery yet. So, but it was like 15 minutes. But it was 15 minutes real world time. Because when you're not warping, time passes linearly in your cabin. So I was like, okay, whatever. I have some other stuff to do. So I just put my controller down, got up. I like did some other work. I came back, and I got into my seat, started driving out towards where I needed to do the delivery. And all of a sudden my vision starts like hollowing out. And I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? And it turns out that while I was waiting, the batteries ran down in my environmental cabin or whatever. Oxygen stopped circulating. I didn't hear an alarm go off. As I'm just about to make the delivery, I pass out in my cabin. They come and recover me. They charge me for that. They charge me for medical services. They charge me for not delivering the cargo. They charge me a late fee. They charge me a cancellation fee. So this one delivery that was gonna like get me back in the black suddenly had like I was getting all these emails from the bank about how I was overdrawn, and it was so crushing. Because 15 minutes I waited, Bruce. 15 minutes, and the man still got me in the end.
That's real life, man. All that shit is real life. It's so funny because like I didn't really necessarily want that experience with Star Trucker, but it totally is that. Like it's like all of a sudden you are in so much debt, and you're like, dude, what the fuck? Oh, like I remember thinking to myself, this game thought about like overdraft fees and shit. I was like, what is going on? Like, why is it doing this to me? But it really. I think maybe once you master it, it probably feels pretty great.
Once you learn all the tricks, yeah,
then you're good.
Before long, I was playing with all my cabin lights turned off and the gravity turned off, so I wouldn't burn extra batteries. So I'm sitting there driving around in the dark while shit's conking all around and like blocking my view. Yep. Yeah, you feel pretty grungy, but you figure out a way to earn a living. But that process is what makes Star Trucker so amazing. Is you kind of role play being a trucker who sleeps in the cabin and does nothing but eats beef sticks on the road because you can't afford anything else.
That's right, because that's real life, it turns out, for a lot of people.
I had a lot of people mentioning how eerily similar that is to real life trucking, which is pretty cool. Didn't expect that at all. Yeah.
Well, we kind of hit our time here, Lawrence. I don't know if you want to take us out with one, or we can end it. It's up to you.
I got one more. One more because the original always had such a soft spot in my heart. Now this one I haven't played yet. It's been on my list, but Beyond Shadowgate is a game that it's a spiritual successor to Shadowgate. If you're not familiar with Shadowgate, that was a kind of first-person point-and-click adventure game back in the 8-bit era. So you had this like viewport that would have like pixel art of what your character's looking at. And then you had a list of verbs to interact, like open, use, get, and you had a little cursor that you would just use on items. And you pick up items and you use them on other things and you solve puzzles and you progress. The original Shadowgate had you exploring this giant castle. And part of the appeal, but also the frustration of it, was the bizarre and arbitrary logic that a lot of the puzzles relied on. And also the fact that nearly everything killed you. So it kind of recreated this sense of exploring a really dank, dangerous environment. All right, all that said, so now we got Beyond Shadowgate. This is a modern reinterpretation of that experience. I think it's in the same universe as Shadowgate, for whatever that matters. But it's much bigger. There's tons more screens. There's more to explore. And from what I've seen, because I've watched some other people play it, watched some streams and stuff, the logic is not quite so ridiculous. Like the game will actually hint you about what you need to do.
That's good. Yeah.
any of the death conditions that you get thrown into, it'll make it pretty clear why it happened, what you could have done to prevent it. So even though it has a lot of that old school charm, it's much more modern in its sensibility, and it doesn't necessarily seek to frustrate you or arbitrarily extend its runtime. It also kind of incorporates elements from Deja Vu and Uninvited, which were two other kind of 8-bit adventure games that were very similar in style. So it kind of combines them all. It's just like a giant homage to exactly those games, but building a ton more on top of it. And again, this is definitely the kind of thing that doesn't get made a whole lot of anymore.
Not at all.
Yeah, right. So it's there. It's huge. It's very spiritually accurate. And if you're a fan of the original, or if the aesthetic appeals to you, you should check it out.
Yeah, it's $18, so I feel like that's a pretty safe bet there. If you like anything point and click at all, because I feel like I played these games a ton when I was a kid on either like the oldest PC in the world or on a Mac or something.
Like Space
way
Quest,
back.
King's Quest, Sierra point and clicks were kind of like that. They had text parsers, but same idea, same dying on every screen, having no idea what you need to do kind of experience.
Yeah, it's funny when you said that. That for sure hit all of the nostalgia at once. When I was like, yeah, dude, those games would just kill you, and then you'd be like, well, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do now? And you go back and die the same way or die a different way, and you're like, what the hell? Like, what is killing me? So it's nice to hear that they clue you in a little more and give you a few more hints besides just killing you over and over, because that's how these games got the playtime out of you back then, since they didn't have much space to work with in terms of storage. So they would have to just have you play the same shit over and over and over and over. And now, like you said, with a modern gaming sensibility, you have a little more to explore.
Absolutely. And to kind of cycle back to what we had said at the beginning of the episode, that's what makes specifically this window of games so exciting is they don't have to arbitrarily extend playtime with tricks like that anymore because design sensibilities have gotten so much better. So you have essentially production values that may be from 10 or 15 years ago. But if once your eyes get used to that, or even if you find it charming, suddenly now you don't have to deal with all the other baggage that comes along with huge budget games. Like they're not beholden to make all that money back as much. So you get the best of all worlds. You don't get the 80s frustration, and you don't get the nickel and diming from big budget games that tend to be a little uncomfortably common these days. So you just get like no nonsense video game in exactly the style that appeals to you. And that's what makes this exact kind of game so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes this podcast exciting. Is because like you could go out and look for. You're like, I really like those point and click games from when I was 10. This is it. Like this is the genre, and you're like, I really like those Contra style games. Like there's a bunch of those on Steam you can find now that are almost exactly the same as Contra. So that's why I feel like this podcast is fun to do, because Lawrence and I were trying to figure out like a topic to do, and I was like, man, we both play so many games, we could probably just turn this into a series on its own of Don't Buy AAA games, and then coming up with indies that we can recommend. Again, most of them are on PC. I'm sorry for the console warriors out there, but they are, a lot of these can just be played on anything PC wise. So thanks again for listening to this. And I know if you've gotten to the very end of this, thanks to our patrons, people who support us on Patreon, because it's one of the major reasons we make this podcast at all. And we're sorry that we've been so late on these podcasts. But thanks again to our patrons for supporting us and allowing us to do this sort of thing. And hopefully we'll continue to make it, because I read a lot of the comments on the first one we made, the Don't Buy AAA Games first one, and everyone was like, you should do this again. And I was like, all right. So we did it again.
Yeah, I think it's I've seen multiple attempts at this in games media of trying to be a recommendation engine for indies, because the volume is ridiculous. That's one of the appeals of AAA gaming, is that there's not that many of them, and all the marketing kind of drives you to the awareness of what's coming out. Everyone knows about Assassin's Creed, right? But maybe not everybody wants to play Assassin's Creed anymore. So, I mean, and to your point, Bruce, if you are feeling exhausted by console AAA, then maybe you're at the point in your gaming journey where investing in a platform that can play all of the weird stuff, maybe it's time. It's like buying a region-free DVD player in the aughts if you were a cinephile. Like, you get to a point where you've watched Van Helsing enough, now it's time to branch out and try something else. That may not, no judgment, but I tried to say the stuff, screening out all the snootiness. I don't think one's better than the other. Just from reactions and kind of the temperature of the gaming audience, it does seem like a lot of people are not as satisfied with the big budget mass market stuff as they used to be. So hopefully you check out some of these, and hopefully we can be a trusted source of recommendations for you guys.
Yeah, so thanks again for listening. We'll probably make another one of these.
Oh, I love talking about these games. These are the games too. I love cheering on. That's what feels so good about it. They're so fun to cheerlead because they're so earnestly made.
That's right.